Since the fall of the apartheid regime, South Africa has been a long-time supporter of Palestine, united in part, of course, by that respective historical struggle. Now, some suggest that Pretoria should continue its help, both in political and material way. And this is the view advocated by the great-grandson of Nelson Mandela, the famous anti-apartheid activist and the first president of South Africa.
During the dark days of apartheid in South Africa, the Palestinian people were among those who stood in solidarity with us. Nelson Mandela himself expressed deep gratitude for the unwavering support of the Palestinian people. He saw their struggle as intertwined with ours, understanding that the fight against oppression and discrimination transcends borders. Today, I echo my great-grandfather's sentiments and call for continuation of our support for Palestine.
Well, joining me right now in the studio is the person behind those words, Mayibuye Mandela. Thank you so much for coming all the way to Moscow to talk to us. It is wonderful to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
The first thing I want to ask you generally, your great-grandfather once said that our freedom is not complete without the freedom of Palestinians. Do you agree with that?
100%. I agree with that statement, 100%. As long as that the Palestinian people are not free, we as South Africans are not yet free too, and Africa at large.
We also saw, we know we've got Qatar and South Africa. They're going to be holding meetings on Wednesday, and the Palestinian issue will be obviously discussed. Everyone around the world is discussing it as these horrific images come in. Do you think that South Africa and Qatar will be able to come up with anything that they can present to the international community? Do you have any expectations for the talks?
Currently, I can't predict what will come out of that meeting, but my wish is the support for the Palestinian people should not be rhetoric.
Do you feel that so far we've only seen rhetoric?
We've seen rhetoric. It's still rhetoric. One thing that we should know, the Palestinian people need to be armed by South Africa. Hamas needs to be armed by South Africa. As long as we protest in South Africa for what is happening in Palestine, it's still rhetoric. As long as we are not providing resources for the Palestinian people to be able to free themselves, it's still rhetoric.
Now, of course, I understand this is something that you voiced before, that you want to arm Hamas. Now, Hamas, in its covenant of 1988, so its founding document, really, I mean, it's quite clear that it believes in the destruction of Israel. Are you not worried that perhaps arming Hamas will be seen as as participating in an attack on a sovereign nation, according to international law?
No, there's no international law here. One thing that we should remember, during the struggle for liberation in South Africa, there was the ANC, which is the majority party and the ruling party in South Africa, currently led by President Cyril Ramaphosa. There was the MK, which was the military veteran that fought the struggle, that was armed by the international world, by Palestinian government, by Russia, by other international countries. They armed the MK, and it was known of being a terrorist organization to the extent that it was banned. They were fighting for the freedom that we have today. So when there is an enemy, someone killing you, you can't give that person that needs to protect himself roses to protect himself. Roses, no, are not. We need to harm the people of Palestine. It will always be like that in the international world, in particular the West, that we are terrorists, we are trying to... But they are killing. Why are they not stopping the Israel from killing innocent souls and children in Pakistan, in Gaza? Why?
Well, it's definitely, it's very interesting to compare, like our correspondent Mayibuye was talking about, comparing apartheid policy in South Africa and seeing echoes of that apartheid policy in Israel now. Do you think that the two countries shared a policy of repression?
In Africa at large, we are the only people that understand and know the pain of apartheid. We were kicked by the apartheid government, and at the same time, they told us how to respond to the kick. So it is, but the situation in Palestine, in Gaza, it's way more worse than the situation that we faced in South Africa. So in Africa alone, when people start asking this question, why are we supporting the Middle East? Why are we supporting the Palestinians? They need to understand, we understand apartheid. We know oppression. Way better than another country. Yasser Arafat provided money for the apartheid, for us to fight against the apartheid regime. He gave money to Nelson Mandela and the country and the MK. He gave money to South Africans, and he even armed, it was not rhetoric, he even armed the MK for us to face the enemy. The enemy of South Africa at that time was not colorless. It was the oppressor. Currently, the Israel is oppressing the Palestinian. And then they are saying it's Hamas. Even if Hamas, Julius has said this, even if Hamas ran to a hospital, you can't, as a normal person, go and bomb that hospital. There are pregnant women there. We need to unite as the world and leave those who are clowning around and go and protect and arm Hamas so that they will fight and protect their people and liberate themselves.
It's interesting, obviously, that you talk about how MK was seen as a terrorist organisation, like Hamas is seen as a terrorist organisation by some as well. Things change over time. Different countries have different interpretation, obviously, of that word. I do want to ask you, the international community took a strong stance on apartheid South Africa. There were sanctions, trade sanctions by about 25 nations. There were boycotts like the Olympics for over 20 years. And slowly, the apartheid government was pushed into isolation. But we're not really seeing that with Israel at the moment. It seems that Israel is being given almost a carte blanche to do whatever it is. Why is that? And do you think there will come a moment where, whether it's 15,000 civilians who have been killed or 20 or 25, where the world will say, enough is enough?
One thing that we must understand and get to accept is the fact, and fight actually, not accept, is the fact that these people have resources. America is backing up these people that are Israel, the evil Israel. And I don't blame America. They've always been in the wrong side of history. From apartheid, they were sending CIAs. What was America doing in apartheid South Africa? They were there. They arrested Nelson Mandela, and America still needs to answer that. What were they doing in South Africa? So they've always been in the wrong side of history. And they are funded by the most powerful propagandists, you see. They have power. Money talks. Resources talk, you see. In South Africa currently, we are planning, the South African government will sanction Israel. We will move the embassies of Israel, and that will do it by fire, by force. We are not going to beg anyone. We are not going to ask anyone. We're going to do it by fire, by force. We are not going to beg anyone. And we are calling on the international world to support Israel, to support Palestinians, to remove embassies of Israel in their countries. In South Africa, we don't want, as long as Israel is evil, does not see anything wrong on what they are doing to the Palestinian people. Their embassies must be removed. The food on the shelves, if they come from Israel, must be removed. We must sanction Israel.
You talk there about fire and force. I mean, it is a cliche, but people say violence shouldn't be used to solve problems. And obviously, in an ideal world, we would be able to solve all our problems by discussion. and not by using weapons. Now, South Africa is a country that uses its words and uses diplomacy. We've seen Minister Pandor. She called the leader of Hamas in October. She got criticised a lot, but she said, this is diplomacy. This is what we do. We talk to people we agree with. We talk to people we disagree with. Also, you mentioned, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa. He has condemned Israeli actions, and he says we support Palestine and we support a two-state solution. When you say fire and force, does that mean that you believe there is no diplomatic way out of this problem?
No. When they are killing the people of Palestine, they are not sitting in a round table. Those are words of cowards. Ne? I believe in South Africa, how did we liberate ourselves first in South Africa? We didn't go and sit around the table. Like the ANC, for an example, was the most peaceful organization who used to write letters to Britain, to England, to all over the world. But they saw, no, this is not solving anything. What did they do? They got weapons, and then they fought. They were not scared of dying. They fought because they were dead already. They fought by shooting the people that are shooting them, by killing the people that are killing them. And today, where are we in South Africa? That made a mark, our struggle. Because if the whole world has been talking with Israel, did Israel listen? It's not listening. So what is the solution? The solution for the enemy that is destroying is to protect yourself. How do you protect yourself? You fight. They have to fight. We are not calling for war, but we are calling, I think that's the only language that they will understand. The people, they can't be kicked, and then the same Israel people tell the people of Palestinians how to respond to the kick. You see, the people of Palestine need to protect themselves. They need to be armed. Once they are armed, Israel will respect them.
But when you say they need to be armed, what do you think they need to achieve? Their own state, coexisting with Israel?
It's their land. It's their land. That land needs to be returned to the Arabs. That land needs to be returned to the Palestinian people, to the rightful owners, to its rightful owners, you see.
And what about the Jewish community which has lived there over the past 80 years?
We don't have a problem with the Jewish people. We have the problem with the Zionists we have a problem with Israel, not specifically Jewish people. Like under apartheid, there were white people that were against the oppressors themselves, against their own skin color. They committed a class suicide. There is a gentleman called Karl in South Africa. We usually call him the Eminem of South Africa. He was there fighting against his own people that they looked alike, you see. So we can't say that we have a problem with the Jewish community. We have a problem with with Israel. We have a problem with the Zionists that are oppressing the Palestinian people, that are killing the children of Gaza, that are killing pregnant women. That's our problem.
So you believe that those Jewish Israeli citizens who are there now, if, as you described there, your ideal situation that the land would be, quote, returned to the Palestinians, to whom it belongs to, would those Jewish Israelis be welcome in this Palestinian state?
It will depend on the Palestinians, how they feel. It's their land. Like us, if we didn't want white people in South Africa, we were going to chase them. But they are still there in South Africa. And they are living in their comfortable zones in South Africa, having coffee and croissant every morning. So if the Palestinian government forgives after solving this issue and say, no, the Jewish people can stay here, the Israel Zionists can stay here, we don't have a problem. It's up to the Palestinian people. I can't decide on behalf of the Palestinian government. Like we have our own policies in South Africa, which even other African states won't agree with our policies, that we welcomed the imperialists. We started sharing what we have with the imperialists, although they are still powerful today in South Africa. They are the one who are running the South African economy. So it will depend on the Palestinian people, how do they feel about the Zionists Israel.
I mean, obviously, I have to just say, kind of devil's advocate, that according to international law, the Jewish state was created in 1948. And probably, I think most people would agree that the ideal situation would be a two-state solution. But I do want to ask you just about perception of Israel in South Africa. You mentioned, and this is something also Mayibuye in her report was talking about, how Israel cooperated and supported the ideas of the apartheid government. Has that shaped the way that modern-day South Africans feel about Israel?
We are the most peaceful and forgiving nation in South Africa, but not of all of us, but the majority. We forget. We don't forget. We know. We know what the Israels did. The Israels provided weapons to the apartheid government to kill us. But today we're not talking about that. It's not because of that when we're saying hands off the Palestinian people, Israel. It's because the injustices that the Israels are doing to the Palestinian people.
You also talked about recalling ambassadors, Israeli ambassadors. South Africa has done that. And it was a very big move. It took a lot of the media space. There was international reaction to it. I was reading the Jewish community, a big Jewish community in South Africa, about 65,000 people. They said, this is very hostile. This means that you support Hamas and terrorists. Do you think that recalling ambassadors is an effective strategy, or does that not shut down channels of communication?
No, even today, they will watch this show. They will understand what do we want. Ambassadors, they came with arrogance, firstly. We have been marching to the embassies of Israel. They were so ignorant to that extent that they don't apologize. They don't see anything wrong that Israel is doing, you see. I think once each state, countries around the world start removing the embassies of Israel, that pinch will make the ears of their authorities understand. It will cripple their economy. It will cripple. They will start understanding, and then it's leading to sanctions. They will start understanding this thing that we're doing is wrong, and they will stop from there.
And just a couple final few questions. You mentioned Julius Malema a bit earlier on. You were talking about him. That's the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party. He has called on the International Criminal Court to issue a warrant against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, we've seen how the ICC can be politicized. We saw how they issued a warrant also for Russian President Vladimir Putin, and South Africa said that this was blatant politicization. But do you think that we'll ever see Israeli leadership held to account for what international organizations are saying now really looks like war crimes in Palestine?
I support the statement that was made by the president of the Economic Freedom Fighters in South Africa, which is the CIC, Julius Malema. I'm 100% behind him. The International Criminal Court is probably currently, we can see it now, it has shown its true colors, that is run by the same people. They are part of it. They are the funders of the International Criminal Court because, look, how many people died in Ukraine? And how many people have now, so far, died in Palestine? There's a difference. There's no... They were supposed to issue that long time ago. They were supposed to go there and arrest Nyawad. But they are the funders behind this mess that is happening in the Middle East, you see. So that is why they are quiet. You can't tell a person to arrest himself, you see. So Julia's statement for calling that, I support it in the sense of we have seen, now we have learned where ICC falls.
And, you know, we've seen, including in South Africa, we saw protests in support of Palestine. We've seen weekly protests in the British capital, in London, really in a number of countries throughout the world. And it doesn't seem that people's anger and sense of injustice is abating. They're as angry as they were on October 7th, when all of the bombing raids started after the Hamas attack. It seems like it's the biggest level of international joint anger, really, since the start of the Iraq War. Do you think that this level is going to keep going? And just generally, what do you think we're going to see in the coming weeks as the conflict unfolds? Are other countries going to get involved, in your opinion?
I think other countries are going to get involved. One thing that we should remember, as you also mentioned, London, during our struggle in South Africa, when countries started sanctioning South Africa and then saying, free Mandela, saying, stop apartheid, South Africa, stop this, London was involved. They had marches. It's the same thing that happened to if you remember, during the struggle for liberation, history tells, during the struggle, countries supported saying, no, this must stop. Apartheid South Africa, this thing of abusing people, killing people in South Africa must stop. So it was the international community. They came together as one. Like currently, what's happening in the world, people are marching, are protesting for the Palestinian people to be free. So I think there will be time where they will listen, but they will take time to listen because now they are the perpetrators. And then America is also supporting that, you see. But if we sanction them, we kill them economically, and the people of Israel fight them, they will stop. Trust me, if now each and every country, if Russia would sanction Israel, South Africa would sanction Israel, London will sanction Israel, etc., etc., they will stop what they're doing. They will be hungry. Now, currently, McDonald's is feeding them. Where does McDonald's come from? In America. You see.
Well, it's interesting. When you read reaction, especially online, there's a lot of anger at the Arab world that they say a lot, but they don't do much. You know, people write, if you would just put an oil embargo, for example, for one day on Israel, maybe then they would stop bombing and start talking. So it's interesting that you talk about taking action rather than taking concrete action like sanctions and killing them economically. The final thing I want to ask you, if we look at this conflict in the context of a new world, we've seen over the last 20 months, really since the start of the war in Ukraine, how countries which felt repressed before are starting to find their voice. We're talking about multipolarity. We're talking about organizations like BRICS. We're exposing, like you said, the ICC as being politically corrupt, used to bend to, let's say, Washington's will. Do you think that at the moment we are seeing the rise of a new world order and that this conflict in Israel is almost kind of the big powers still fighting, clinging on to their interests in the region because they know that their time of the empire is coming to an end?
I think the West, in particular, there is something that they are planning at times, but they are doing the destruction wrong because they are killing innocent souls. There is something that they are planning. Hence, you saw during how they wanted to distract BRICS in South Africa. They tried by all means necessary to distract it not to happen because it was a threat. It's a threat to the world economy. It's a threat to the dollar, you see. So I might not be sure of their intelligence currently, but it can be a distraction, but the distraction is very evil if they're doing like that and killing people in order to fulfill a certain goal and want to see our reactions, you see. For an example, if you remember during President Zuma's time, Omar al-Bashir went to South Africa for the AU So President Zuma says, the International Criminal Court says, no, you must arrest al-Bashir when he's here. He says, no. When Omar al-Bashir arrives at the airport, immediately when he lands, that place is declared as an AU place. Where he goes, where the event is taking place, that place is a what to call, is an AU place. So he's not here on a state visit. So it was what was supposed to be happening when they were trying to remove President Putin out of, not to come to attend the BRICS summit.
Yeah.
Because they're so terrified now of BRICS, they're so scared, you see.
It definitely looks like a different world, and I think we can all agree that those images coming in from Palestine are absolutely horrifying, and the loss of innocent souls is beyond imagination tragic, and that peace will finally come to the Middle East after so many decades of war. Thank you so much for joining us and for offering your opinion and your insights into all of this. We really appreciate it. That was Mayibuye Mandela, South African political activist and, of course, great-grandson of the anti-apartheid champion Nelson Mandela. Thank you.
Thank you.